Mānawa mai e a te putanga o Matariki. Mānawa mai e a te ariki nui o te rangi. Mānawa mai e a te mātahi o te tau. Nau mai, tomo mai, ki tēnei whare kōrero, e kia nei, ko Seeds of Matariki. A kāti, tēnā, kia rukutia tā tātou kaupapa, kia ruiruia o tātou whakaaro, ki ngā pūkenga, ki ngā wānanga, ki ngā purapura o Matariki. Ko Matariki te rā e aro mai ana i te pai, te whetū tapu o te tau. Ko Tipuārangi kei runga, ko Tame Malcom tēnei e tau nei. Nau mai haere mai ki tā tātou kaupapa, Seeds of Matariki. Kei te pēhea koe māpau.
Kei te pai, kei te ora, tuatahi ake tēnei ka mihi ki a koe, i wā wāhi tēnei whare kōrero, utira i whakawātea tēnei wāhi kia tai mai au ki roto i a tātou, hei wānanga i nei kōrero. Wai hoki, tēnei te mihi ki a koe, ko hoki mai ki enei taringa, no reira neira ka mihi i te tuakana.
Tēnā koe mai, bro. Tuatahi ake, bro, ko wai koe, no hea koe.
Whatitiri ki te rangi, ko te aroa tēnei ki te whenua, ko Ngāti Tarawhai, Ngāti Pikiao, o Kuiwi, no Rotorua hau, te tākiri o te waka, hei tipu mai ki konei, ki Rotorua, ka mitu ko Tame Malcom tōku ingoa.
So you were raised here in Rotorua, ne, bro?
Born and bred.
Born and bred,
yeah.
Talk a little bit about your upbringing, being raised here as a te arawa, nanakia.
So I was pretty lucky. I really enjoyed my upbringing here in Rotorua. My parents, my dad was working in whāngarei at the time when they found out they were pregnant with us, and they said, let's go back to Rotorua so the kids know where they're from. And kia mohi o mai tātou he mahanga hau. I've got an older twin brother. Older depending how you look at it. Pākea nei, he came out first. And so he's the oldest, but Mauri nei, ai ki te kōrero ka tukuna te mātā muri e. Hei, wāhi te whai au tuatahi. And yeah, from there, we sort of just lucky, just we got to grow up here, got to know where we're from, got to walk our maunga, play in the bush, play on the marae, grow up with all of our cousins and stuff.
Wow. And so what was it like, just being a twin? You probably get asked that all the time, do you fellas look the same? Are you fellas different? Or what's it about being a twin that you find great but also challenging?
I loved it, eh? Like no matter where we went, I always had a best friend. Even to this day, we're still best friends, so we're pretty tight. If you ask most twins, they're like, what's your twin like? The most common reply is, they're ugly. And so if you ask either of us, we'll quickly try to get in to say that joke first. But no, it was cool. We everything we did, so we, up until I think we were like 16, we were in the same room. We'd wake up, go to the gym together, go to sports together, go to school together, have the same circle of friends. And from there, because we're sort of with each other 24/7, I remember one day we were in a vehicle and I got a bit sick and I didn't say anything to anyone, but he looked over and he knew straight away, something's up, when you're, with someone 24/7. He goes, Matua, do you want to slow down? I think my brother's going to be sick. And no sooner had we pulled over that I went out and spewed up. And I was like, well, it's the twin thing. Like, you guys know. And I was just like, well, it's when you're hanging around 24/7, you kind of pick up on those little cues.
It's not even just 24/7. It's like your whole entire life, from inception to...
Sometimes he'll write something, he'll write a message for his partner and his kids or something, and I'll look and I think it's my writing, like it's that similar. So even these, some things that, just innate. But the rerekētanga, and it might bring us back to the kaupapa, is he, ahakoa I tipu tahi māua, and we had the same upbringing. He wasn't into hunting and stuff like that growing up, whereas I was addicted to it. I got the bug from a young age and couldn't shake it. And to this day, I still love it, where he's like, I'll come out for a hunt if I have to, if you need some help, but wasn't interested in it.
And what was it about the whole experience of hunting that hooked you, bro? Was it seeing Pāpā, uncle, or what was it about that whole world?
I don't know, bro, but the earliest memory that I often talk about is I used to go over to Makoia Island in the middle of Lake Rotorua, and ki reira ako I te mautaiaha, mau rākau. And every morning we'd get up and go for a walk around the Ngahere, and they'd teach us all the rākau. And I remember one day, one of my whanaunga, my tuakana, Tihini Grant, who's a mātanga when it comes to the birds and the rākau and the rongoa, he couldn't make it. And so we did the walk anyway, and people that were new to the island, oh, what's this rākau? And I was able to recite them all going, oh, that's a tōtara, that's a rimu, that's ake, and what they were used for. And it was from there I realised, like, I love this stuff. How do you guys not remember it? All my cousins, like, why don't you guys remember this? And I'm like, oh, it's dumb, it's boring. And I was like, I love it. And yeah, from there, it wasn't so much the hunting, it was being in the forest that I loved. And so we'd go out sort of trapping, hunting, hiking, any of those experiences. I liked it, but it was more being in the bush was my vibe. Like, that's what I really enjoyed. And as as time went on, in fifth form, I chose my subjects that would align to me being in the bush. Yeah. As soon as I left school, I just wanted to work for either dock or in the forestry. And I aligned my summer holidays to do that. As soon as I finished uni, I had my exam on the Wednesday. By the Friday, I was working for dock. Yeah, so I was just, any chance I got, I was in the bush.
Bro, haha te Mauri o te Ngahere ki a koe, bro.
Oh, bro. How long's our podcast, bro? That's a wānanga and a half. Yeah, I mean, there's probably 101 different whakaaro on what Mauri is, and then 101 different whakaaro on what the Mauri of the Ngahere is. And we often think of it as the life force. But what I find interesting through my research is when our tūpuna left Hawaii, they had concepts like mana, tapu, whanaungatanga, whakapapa. Engari ki hai rātou I whakapua ki tēnei mea te Mauri, they didn't have Mauri. Well, they didn't, you didn't hear them speak of Mauri. And none of the research that I've found so far, so there's a caveat there, I haven't found anything yet to suggest that there was a kupu Mauri. But after time, we start seeing Mauri appear in some of our waiata and some of the whakapapa, like people's names start containing the word Mauri. And it's around that 1400 AD where we start seeing it pop up. So if we landed here, if Te Aroa landed here in 1200, about 200 years of them being here, the concept of Mauri came about. For our tūpuna in the Cook Islands and Tahiti, what they kind of talk about as Mauri is captured within the broader concept of mana. So something about our environment here in Aotearoa led us to really define this thing Mauri as its own separate concept, separate notion, separate philosophy. Yeah, and it's just dipping our toes in the water of this philosophical kōrero of Mauri.
Very here for it. And then when you're going into the Ngahere, when now we've got, I guess, the concept or philosophy of Mauri, that was communicating to our tipuna in a sense, being like, oh, nah, there's something alive in here. But it's not seen, eh? Mauri isn't something that's, I guess, seen, but more so felt. Is that something there?
Yes. Oh man, these are good pātai, bro. They're getting me to think. Because oftentimes people can go into a ngahere and they can feel it's mana, they can feel it's tapu. But Mauri is something that I think I certainly don't have the skill. There's very few people out there who can feel it and understand it. And, you know, I spent a good chunk of my working life in the Ngahere, and so people would assume that I could feel it, but I think it's only the gifted few that are really in touch with, I guess, the right Mauri or the right frequencies of the Ngahere to really understand it. But our tūpuna knew how to, you know, because their livelihoods relied on the Mauri of the Ngahere, so they had good ways of understanding and capturing it.
Wow. And so thinking about where things are at, I guess now for you, you know, being out in the bush quite a lot, has there been some tauranga that you've learned growing up that is still very much so applicable today?
Oh, yes, 100%. Growing up, we were taught different tikanga and the kawa around different practices and protocols. At the time, I thought, black magic, you know, oh well, that was cool to know. And then as I got older, I realized there was actually some merit to it and a lot of thinking behind the stuff that we were taught. And as I started practicing it, I was always worried that people would be like, oh, look at that dude doing some weird stuff over there. Whereas now, my whole research is about it and people are interested. So, hei tauira, if you play music to plants, the plant grows healthier.
Yeah.
And then there was some research in 2018 over in Australia that showed if you played the sounds of healthy coral reef to dying coral reef in the ocean, the coral grew back. So they said, what if we played the sounds of a healthy forest ecosystem to a dying forest ecosystem? Will that stimulate the health of the forest? And so the Biological Heritage National Science Challenge started looking into stuff like that. And as a side, the Te Tira Whakamataki, we also started looking into that concept. And we found that the sound, when we mapped the sound of a healthy forest ecosystem, they matched quite similarly to the sounds of our pātere and our waiata mō te atea and our karakia.
Oh.
And so I was thinking at the time, and I still believe it, that our tupuna, when they were composing karakia and whatnot, they would have based it on the sounds that they had to influence them, the ngahere. And so ki reira ka kite mātou, the sound of a healthy forest ecosystem that our tupuna lived in is captured in the sort of the wavelengths. I'm doing this because that's wavelengths. The wavelengths of our old karakia and our pātere.
Wow, they were tapping into the frequency, they were tapping into...
And it gets even more interesting as well. So, that would, one would think that could be a good research project, is to play the sounds of our karakia and our waiata to the forest to see if it aligns. And so the Biological Heritage National Science Challenge is looking into that. But as we started sort of pulling together the kōrero, the mātauranga around it, I tere tai atu mātou ki te karakia o Rata. Rata, when he went into the forest and he felled the tree, and then the next day the tree was standing back up. So he kept doing it, and then one day he came back and felled the tree and he hid in the forest. So, well, how's this tree keep standing? And as he was waiting, he saw the birds, the insects, and the lizards all come back together, bring all the bark and the chips back together, stand the rako back up, put it back together. And so he jumped down and he goes, "Kei te aha koutou, what are you up to?" And they were te tino hakaturi, these critters, te ririki o tāne. They said, "Oh, you didn't follow the right protocols." So we had to stand it back up. And so they taught him the protocols. And one of them was the karakia that followed a certain frequency and a wavelength. The tikanga is to tap on the rako. And this is one of the tikanga that we still practice today. Tap on the rako, there's a certain rhyme and rhythm to it. Say the karakia that follows a certain wavelength. And then you get the few chips, light a fire, cook a kumara, and all the kaimahi eat the kumara. So kia noa rātou, and you chop the tree down. That started in Hawaii, that tikanga. Nowadays, when we practice it, we know that by tapping on the rako, you're mimicking the sounds of a bird that eats insects. So you're scaring away all the insects from that tree, giving them a chance to live. Lighting the fire, you're scaring away any birds and lizards because they think, oh, the forest is on fire, let's get out of here. And by following that tikanga and that kawa, and the karakia as well, mimics the sounds of predatory birds, so everything else knows to get away. By following that tikanga, you've just told all of te tini o hakuturi, the birds, the bees, the insects, the lizards, hey, I'm about to chop this tree down. If you want to live, stay safe. So by following our tikanga, we have less ecological impact on the forest. And by taking a tree out our way, you're doing it in a sustainable way that ensures the biodiversity is still maintained.
Wow, bro, that's
awesome.
That was a long story. Bro, but I'm like, as you're talking, I'm thinking about like a few of my good friends who are very much so passionate about the Ngahere, and there's a certain feel when I'm around my bros, and I get the same feeling. It's like just connected. There's like a feeling of connection, awareness around what's beneath you or what's around you. Like, is that something that you're aware of, or is that just the way things are for you?
I think it's the way things are. And but as you're saying that, I was like, I feel the same when I'm talking to people who like go diving and fishing. And, ko tai atu koe ki taku marae, you see in my marae, it's like tua whenua as it's in the middle of the bush. And so we don't really vibe with the sea. But when I meet people that do, surf, fish, swim, I buzz out like our bro Iriora. Me and him went out on a boat one day and I watched him dive and I was like blown away. I was like, how do you even do that, bro? That's like mind blowing. And it wasn't anything to him. He was like, oh, that's just what I do most weeks. So I don't really think about that connection actively. I just know I've seen it elsewhere.
Wow. And when you think about, I guess, do you feel that's where you're most yourself when you're out in the Ngahere, bro? Or what are the spaces that give you a similar feeling?
Yes. the Ngahere is that's that reset place that, if things at work or my research, everything's a bit too much, I always need a bit of a time out. And I'm really lucky that the whānau, like my wife, she'll say, okay, she'll look after the kids knowing that I'll probably be out for 24 hours. But interesting that sometimes when I'm in the Ngahere, especially if we're tracking an animal or chasing an animal, normally that's when all the pleasantries go out the window. I'd hate for anyone to think that that's my true self. So I'm like, hurry up, get out, shoot. It's more urgency of trying to get a kai, but otherwise, the Ngahere is the chill place.
Man, and you can think about it as long as you can think back, that's always sort of been something for you. And what are some other experiences growing up, going out with your pāpā or anything? Like, was there any key memories that you can think of where you're like, this is it?
When we were kids, my pāpā said, actually, we're going to stop hunting and stuff like that because I want you guys to focus on schooling first and then sports. And I know that if you get the hunting bug, you'll be like me and just want to go bush. And so he was quite an avid tennis player and rugby league player. And he sort of, if the hunting was good, he'd, leave his rugby boots at the door and go off hunting. And he didn't want that for us. And despite his many attempts, his efforts to sort of persuade us not to follow that track, as I said, I got the bug. The irony is, years later, once he retired from his work, he came and worked with me, and we both ended up, running a pest control business out in the bush. So despite his attempts not to sort of guide us down that track, him and I both ended up there. And so we spent a good couple of years out in the bush together. And it's probably there that some of the best memories of hunting I have. Just him and I. And growing up, and even to this day, he's not one to get trophies. Like if he shoots a big animal, you won't see, he won't bother taking the head and hanging it up in the garage. There's only one animal hanging in his garage, despite, many of the big trophies he's got over the years, over the decades. It was this, him and I were trying to get a feed, and we were going out day after day after day. And we finally got a stag, and it's nothing big. It's, most people like big antlers that are symmetrical. In his garage is this, a stag that's got uneven antlers, little points, but he was like, that was a good trip, couple of days on end, against the elements out in the middle of the bush. We finally got this thing, and we were like, right, let's go home. And so he took this animal with him. Oh, you want the head? Yeah. It's duct taped to his roof, like not even showing, not even trying to showcase it. He just wants just purely for the memories.
Wow, fine. I'm sure you fellas got many of those sort of like memories in the sense, bro. And you're a pāpā now, and do you think your babies will be following similar footsteps?
Oh, I read something the other day. Well, I read something. I'm not that clever. I saw something on Instagram as I was scrolling. But this guy was saying how he doesn't want his kids to only follow his interests as if that's the only way they'll connect with him. So I'm really cautious. We're tāwe, kōrero pāpana. Like how do we find time to connect with our kids in a meaningful way, rather than them just doing what we're doing, because that's all they think is the only way to connect. So I'll expose them to it. Like I've taken Rehua, our pōtiki, out. I took him out for last year's Raw. So I think he was like 1 and a bit. And he was on my front pack. And he enjoyed it, just walking around the bush. Kaiwhare knows that if he's on my back, he can sleep. So when we're out, but he knows when I pull the rifle up to block his ears. So whether they catch the bug or not, I'll see. But I'm keen to just expose them to as much as possible. And if they enjoy it, sweet. If not.
I reckon that's such an important piece of mātauranga or whatever you saw for us as pāpā to really sit with is what are other ways outside of our interest that we can actually connect with our tamariki. There was something that I thought about when my mātāmua Noa was about to come into te ao marama nei. I was thinking about my own journey and me and my papa, and one of the things that I've reflected on is, man, if Papa loved me this way or this way, you know, there was just a lot of things that I was curious about. But what I got from that was there might be a way that I love my son, but there might be a different need that he needs from me. And so as I hear the kōrero from you, I'm thinking, you know, I would have to adjust things to be more suitable to what he needs to have that sense of connection.
Bro, do you ever think like, oh, because I do this, do you think, what are my gaps that I may not have within me to give my child, you know, as much experiences as possible?
Mm-hmm.
Do you do anything to fill those gaps, or do you think?
One thing that I'm in at the moment is how do I make changes, particularly with the whānau dynamic at the moment. I know we need to create a routine in the evening, and this is just an example, but I do a lot of my mahi in the evening.
Oh, yeah,
and so that's just when a lot of my online work is sort of like happening. And so in regards to your question, I know now with having two tamariki, I have to change what I'm doing to suit the whānau so that we're able to create what we actually need. And so that's a gap that I'm seeing, but I've been struggling to fill it because I enjoy this part here. And so that's where I'm at the moment, and I know I have to make those adjustments. Mm-hmm.
I also reckon, like, tēnei reanga at this day and age, bringing your kids to things like, you know, as you and I are talking in here, I know my son's out there playing with everyone and running around, but most people are pretty open to bringing kids to work or understanding that when, you know, kids come first nowadays. Must have been different back in the day.
Yeah.
But so you're going to turn to a morning person?
I'm going to try. I'm just got to move a few things around just so it does work that way. And, you know, even having, like, staying on the Pāpā theme, me and my Pāpā have had some awesome moments throughout these recent years as I've started to mature, be more developed, be more courageous, and starting conversations, I suppose, that he has opened up to me around how things are just totally different now from how his upbringing was with his Pāpā and how things are now with us, and it's just going to continue to evolve. And I feel that's just something important for us to be reminded of, that the times or the conditions that we were raised in doesn't have to be how things continue, you know, but how we're able to make those changes for ourselves in our uri.
Who taught you how to change nappies? Random question.
My sister had a baby young, and I was still at Kura. She was at home, and just having baby around, just sort of seen it, done it once or twice. But by the time I had tamariki, which was almost not 2 decades, just over a decade, I was ready. I was like just at that stage of being ready to have a baby, and I was just keen to do it all. What about you, bro?
I remember needing to, you know, when Kōrangi was pregnant, I remember thinking, I better learn to do this. And then as soon as Kaiwhare was born, I was like, oh, this is my vibe. Like, this is something I can contribute value to. But I remember everyone saying, oh, you know, back in the day, Pāpā didn't do nappies.
They didn't do it, eh?
And even my dad says, he goes, I don't think I ever changed any of your guys' nappies. Whereas now he, you know, quite easily changed the nappies of all his moko. So times have changed.
I was actually heard something about that where there was a very, very low percentage of Pāpā who changed nappies back in the days, whereas now it's increased significantly. And so I feel the capabilities or the capacity to be a Pāpā in a different way has just changed in time. And I feel we're just lucky to, I suppose, be in a space where we are able to make those adjustments as tāne to be more supportive in those spaces, you know.
And I feel like me and my cousins and brothers and stuff, that people I grew up with, like we'll comp each other up. I'll smoke your happy changes, and I'm sure that's not healthy. But and then where it gets really bad is if we see another Pāpā who's not a nappy changer, we judge that. Bro, up your game, yeah.
Up your game, bro. But bro, and so I tipu ai koe roto I te reo Māori, bro? Or
Tōna nei tipu, bro. So, like I said, my parents brought us back here. Moved back here to have us, and so they eat tukuna ki te kohanga reo, ki te kura, he kura rumaki ki roto I te kura auraki, so it was a Mauri unit within a bigger school. And then my dad did the Aussie thing. So he'd fly up to Aussie to work and then come back. And so my mum's Pākehā. And so she learnt Māori to help get us through school. Yeah. So I remember when I was maybe 13, 14 at high school when we had to do translations. And so she'd take us to the library and, she's quite fair with blue eyes in the depths of, the Māori dictionaries helping us translate this stuff. So that was cool growing up. And then I mui te whānau mai a kaiwhare before our oldest was born, my wife and I, because we'd talk Māori to each other, and then we thought, well, let's go back and learn just so we know when our kids come, we can teach them proper reo. And then that's when I realised, I ki te au te whāwhārua ki roto i tōku reo. I was like, I need to really learn. So just been on that journey, on that vibe.
I haere koutou ki te wānanga o Waikato, or did you do like a 4-year immersion, or was it just doing?
Nah, we picked up pīnaki, but if I had my time again, I would go back and start from ronaki, to be honest, because I remember doing pīnaki and there was stuff in there. I was like, I don't know this, I don't know that.
Bro, speak to me. That's where I'm at right now, bro.
And I was like, and so when I did it, they were like, oh yeah, you can always come back. And I was like, I need to go back a couple of lessons. So I sort of bumbled and struggled my way through, and then just went to every kura reo I could. So we were still trying to work and then have baby, and I was a stay-at-home dad for a bit, and Kaurangi went back to mahi, so that kind of worked out for the reo journey. But even to this day, bro, any opportunity I can get, if I can get free time, I'll try to get to a kura reo, take my kids with me, my 2 boys, so they'll be recognised as 2 little nanakia running around the marae while we were trying to learn.
I remember the wānanga that we went to earlier in the year, and you're just walking around with your pack on and your baby was on the back, and I was like, wow, this fella's out here doing it.
Bro, what about at the Te Kura Reo Taiao ki roto i a mātou Waikohatu at my marae, my oldest boy comes running and goes, Pāpā, kei au e tahi rare, I got some lollies. And I was like, oh, where'd you get that from? And he goes, ki raro i te tūru, from under the chair. He was grabbing the bubble gum from under. And I was like, don't tell anyone. I don't want people to judge me as a dad. And then then he was giving these lollies out to other kids. I was like, no.
Oh, bro, that's so funny, bro. Kids will be kids, bro.
Right, kids.
But you're actually like speaking to me because kei roto au I te pīnakitanga I tēnei tau, and oh boy, bro, I'm just like needing floaties, bro. I'm just out there in the middle of the ocean, or just got dropped in the Ngahere, just trying to find my way out or find my way back to shore, bro. I'm like sinking out here because similar to like what you said, I'm listening to kōrero and I'm like, hey, first ever time I heard what a hangu was during this course, and I'm like trying to figure out all of these things, but I roto I tēnei huarahi, bro, te nuinga o ngā akoranga, te nuinga o ngā māramatanga no hoki. So just one of those things for me, just to be like, this is hard, but just got to keep turning up, brother.
Were you good at school? Were you a bookworm at school?
I wasn't a bookworm. I was just more in the kapahaka space, waiata. That was where I really sunk into my old Māori.
Back before when we were talking about gaps, that's one of mine is I can't sing to save myself. I can't do kapaka.
Bro, but when you're like next to 40 other people, bro, your voice sort of like just merges.
Not if you're a 6'6" giant, bro. But going back to that, when I was going to all these kura reo, I remember thinking like, oh man, tēnei mea te wete reo, he tani whai ia. Te hako tōna pai, te kino hoki. And that's when I had the idea, what about a Kura Reo Taiao? Like, that's what I love. And so I went to Rangi Mātāmua and I said to him, bro, what about a Kura Reo Taiao where we just learn about Reo Te Tai? And he goes, yeah, well, you started then. And I was like, I'm still a student. Like, and he said, no, the concept's good. And so I went and got some fundings and then through Te Tira Whakamātaki. And then I went back to Rangi and said, we've got some funding. He goes, right, let's do it. And the idea being was, ko te paitata ki a koe ngā te reo e hāngai ana ki te taiao. Ki waha, some kupu, whakatauki. And ko te pai tawhiti, kia panoni te āhua o ngā kura reo, to know that kura reo don't have to just follow go inside and sit in a classroom and learn. Like you can go outside to learn, and, that type of thinking. But also, when it comes to learning reo, there's, you can go down the route of being in a classroom all day. You can go through kapahaka, You can go learn on the marae by kōrero and all that. I was like, none of those things I'm good at or I enjoy, whereas Taiao, that was something that I was addicted to. And that's when I realised, for the first Kura Reo Taiao, we had 1,000 people register to try and come, and we only had 140 spaces. I think 180 turned up on the day. So
was that at Rotoihu?
Rotoiti, yeah.
Rotoiti.
Yeah, and so we had all of that. That's when I realised that there's, that there's so many other people that are keen on this. Rangi Mātama was the one, him and Papaririata, and all those other kaiako, man.
Oh, bro, those two together, Rangi, me ona pukinga Papaririata. I've been in like 2 of his wānanga before where I was just there and whai, te wai, uakina tōna waha, bro. You just go rere haere, he just sort of like takes you on a journey and he just knows. He speaks so beautifully, elegantly.
He loves it I think that's the difference. He loves it. But all of the kaiako that came to that Kura Reo Taiao, they loved teaching. So when Rangi was trying to find the right kaiako, he said, they've got to be good at reo, mōhio ki te taiao, and just love teaching. And we saw that, like, Herea Winitana, he loves it when he sees someone become enlightened. Like the moment he sees that penny drop in them, he feels satisfied, like, oh, yep, kua hea. And so he's addicted to that.
Wow. And so that just happened this year, eh?
Yeah.
Because there was 2 Kura.
Yeah, there was the one.
In Tokomaru and then Rotoiti, ne?
Yeah. And then at the end of the one Rotoiti, te aorere pēwhairangi tira tono kia taia te kaupapa ki roto ia Tokomaru, and i reira mātou ka whakae. So we were cool to, really lucky to have that go. And then at Tokomaru, to my Cassidy, put a tono to have it down in Otago, or Tāko ki roto ia Ngaitahu, and Tumai's one of my mentors. Man, ki te kōrero manu tāua, he's got to be in that kōrero because he is up there. And so this thing's sort of just taken off now that people are interested in this kura reo. And so one of my sort of missions was to see these pop up all over the show. Because kua mate au ki te taiatu ki ngā kaupapa me te kōrero, they're like, oh, Tame, can you come talk about the environment or conservation? I'm like, there's 101 other people out there in any given bush, maunga, ako. So these kura reo were a good way for people to see that actually, just because I'm out here spinning yarns all the time doesn't mean I'm the expert, that there's tons of other people out there.
Wow. And so what I'm also hearing is that we're talking about kura reo, but we're also talking about te reo Māori. And so that doesn't have to mean that you just follow the one path with the wete reo, but there are other ways that can be complementary to our reo journey rather than just feeling we need to be afraid of just the one way of learning, which is cool that the kura reo provides that opportunity for us to learn the reo in our own iwi, but also learning reo based on the interests. So there's Kura Reo Taiao, and so it's cool to see all of these different things popping us for us on the reo journey, ne, bro?
Yeah, and that's, I remember I went to one te Kura Reo Pāki, this kura reo for businesses, and they got me to speak on environmentalism or conservation, or how they can include environmentalism in their mahi. And I remember thinking, man, it'd be cool if they could come and speak to us, because me running a pest control business, I was terrible at it. My wife will be the first to tell you that. Rather than send invoices, I'd come home with kina, lamb's tails. It's like, you cannot pay a mortgage with that. And I was like, but I got heaps of mates. So era hononga katoa.
Oh, bro, and coming back to our kaupapa, me kōrero nei tāu e pāna kia Matariki, kia Tipuārangi. What are some kōrero, bro? How e tahi kōrero e pāna ki ngā manu, ki te Ngahere, ki tēnei wā o te tau?
Me mihi ki a koe te kōkō, tēnei pai. And kōkō is another word for tui. And in that mihi, if you know the tui's life cycle, you know the mihi that, the meaning behind the mihi. If you're saying someone, oh, he kōkō koe, he tui koe, you could be referring to, they've got a sweet voice. But for me, how we were taught growing up is a tui spends 12 weeks on the nest. After that, it spends the next 2 years of its life going around the forest and developing its own unique waiata. And so it will go through the forest and listen to the most unique sounds and stitch that waiata into its own waiata. So if it hears, say, one kiwi, but there's 20 kereru, it'll catch that sound of the kiwi and stitch it into its own. And, if it hears a certain breeze comes through that rustles the leaves in a certain way, it'll stitch that into its waiata. And so after 2 years, it's got this unique waiata, different to any other manu, and they use that to attract a mate. And so when we were growing up, if we wanted to do something good, I wanted to play volleyball at one stage. And so my uncle, Taiaha is probably a better example. My uncle Mana was like, me whai koe te mahi a te tui, be like a tui, go learn from heaps of different experts, then from these unique styles, and then come back with your own style. And so, anei koe, you're speaking to all of these people, and you're picking up, some, knowledge from here, there, and there, and stitching it together to make this kōrero. But our tupuna, it wasn't just in a mihi. Our tupuna used to use it as well. And so when it came time for Forest House, when the New Zealand government was trying to figure out how do we actually fix the forest or what's wrong with the forest, we know it's not quite right. Our tupuna said to them, listen to the tui, the kōkō, it'll tell you what's wrong. And they thought, we're not going to listen to a bird. That sounds silly. We'll go follow this other way. And they went down following an American ecologist of forest monitoring. But what they were trying to tell him is that the tui will tell you what birds are in dire need or dire straits. What they're picking up the sounds of birds that are near extinction. So if a tui's coming back sounding like a kōkō, kōkako, the kōkako numbers are down. There must only be a few of them, so let's focus on getting the kōkako numbers up. So the tui was an indicator of what birds are in are in bad shape.
Wow. How te mihi, bro? E mihi ana.
Kia koe te kōkō. Just to refer to someone as a kōkō or a tui, as I said, you could be talking about they've got a voice like a tui or a kōkō, but you could also say, you've gone around and been collecting all this knowledge to bring back and make it your own unique knowledge set.
Wow. That's bloody choice, bro. I'm going to just put that in the back pocket there, brother. And when I think about Tipuārangi, I think about, a kereru, because that was the kai that, I've heard pūrakau around our tipuna would just think that was a delicacy. And so, kia koe tai kōrero e pāna ki te kereru, bro, or?
Yeah. And me pono aku kōrero, Puke Timothy's the one of kereru. Man, short of being an expert in eating it, he knows so much. And so while I can only ever talk to stuff I've read or heard from our kaumātua, one of the ones I did hear, and I remember when we were doing bird monitoring, I brought that into the fore, was our tupuna would stop, and if the kereru was sitting in the tree above you and it took 8 breaths, then it's good to spear now because it's chilled out. It's just going to stay on that tree. And so I remember when we were doing bird counts, and you sit there and just listen to birds. But I watched this kereru land, and I was like, it did 8 breaths, sort of just breathe in and out. And it was just like, I think it's chewing its food. It was just chilling, and its chest was all puffed up. Did 8 breaths. And I said to the guy next to me, I was like, I reckon that bird's not going to move now. It just did the 8 breath thing. And he was this was in 2006, and he was a bird expert, and he said, I've heard kōrero that the Māori would know when a bird was going to sit still, and how did you know? And I told him, he goes, okay, and he's right down. So we tried scaring this bird, and we just let him move, shaking the tree and whatnot, and it was just flying with the branch. Man, so our tupuna had some good knowledge.
They were just so observant of the taiao, bro.
Observant, bro.
Interacting with it in ways.
And this is probably another kōrero, ahakoa kaore hāngai ana ki te kereru, but the huia. So everyone knows, the huia was a manu rangatira, and that only rangatira wore their feathers in their hair. Wahine mai, tāne mai. I remember when I was at high school thinking, why was that? Why was that manu, singled out as a manu rangatira, that only rangatira could wear it? And so I started doing, my research or just asking around. But one of the kōrero I tau mai ki au was that when our tupuna first got here, when they would get lost in the forest, they knew that the huia sat on the bush's edge. So if they were lost in the forest, they knew that if they followed a huia, they'd get to an opening because the huia sat, this opening in the forest. The huia sort of sat on that margin. And the huia weren't flyers, they sort of branch hopped, so you know they were pretty close to an opening. So if you followed the huia, you'd get to an opening, you get to safety, you'd know where you are, you get the bearings. And so nāwai, as we, our tupuna, you know, learned to be in this environment and through observations, when they went to war, everyone knew to follow the huia to get to safety. So the rangatira started wearing them in their hair to say, hey, if you're in trouble, follow me, I'll get you to safety. And so that's how that came about.
Wow.
Rangatira wore them, hey, tohu, you know, to let everyone know, follow me, I'll get you to safety.
So when wars were happening prior to that, they would look out at the ngahere and then notice that the huia would always find its way to the edges.
Yeah, just
to
chill out on the edges.
And so in times of stress or when there were battles happening, the rangatira will wear the huia to mimic or to use that mātauranga of the observation to aki their people to safety.
And I mean, in the midst of battle, you know, everything's going crazy. I can imagine if you see a white tip in the middle of it, you know, that's the safety. Follow that. That's going to be my rangatira that'll get me to safety. And that's where that whakatauki comes from. He Huia Kai Manawa te manoa whai huia.
Oh.
So he Huia Kai Manawa te manoa whai huia. Huia Kai Manawa is a prized position. So my greatest prized possession is the fact that I can follow a huia. So you can either use it if, you know, to a rangatira say, you know, it's a mihi to the rangatira, he Huia Kai Manawa, you're a prized position because you can follow the huia, you can read the signs of the taiao, you know how to, you know, observe the taiao. If you're a follower of the leader, it's a mihi say, actually, I am, you know, my greatest prized position is to know when I need to follow my leader.
Wow.
Huia Kai Manawa te manoa whai huia.
When we come to, I guess, wrapping up our kōrero, brother, and, you know, we think about this time, we think about Matariki, we think about what it means, we think about the gathering of people, we think about what is coming next, there's space to reflect, but passing it over to you, kia whakakapi e nei kōrero, bro, do you have any final words to share with our listeners?
Me mihi ki a koe, whakawātea tēnei wāhi, kia tai mai tēnei manu ki roto i a koe, roto i tēnei kaupapa. And ia tātou e aroana kia Matariki, kia mahuta mai a Matariki. I just think, you know, there's so many cool kaupapa out there, eh? As Matariki approaching, you know, I'm just almost on stress levels trying to figure out which ones to get to because they're all so amazing and so cool. But because my Pōtiki rehua, he was born on Matariki, we normally, it's his second birthday coming up, so we'll just find time to just chill out at home during Matariki. I think that's, you know, the underlying theme of Matariki is, you know, to get together and chill. Kua toka tērā whakaaro ki roto i a mātou. We've sort of made that a thing now that we just hang out as a whānau, have people around, but with the busy lives that we're leading and, you know all about it, being all across the country, any chance you get to hang out with the whānau and just chill, we're going to take that. So we'll be doing that for Matariki.
How special are those moments though, eh, bro? Just when you're with your whānau and you just take a breath and you just look and you're like, how good is that feeling, eh? As a pāpā, as a hoarangatira, like, man, kare tuatu.
Yeah, and I got this habit of when I'm with my kids, I just video them eating, you know, I got a bunch of videos of my Pōtiki eating a pear and a toast, a bunch of videos of my mātāmua singing or doing this whai kōrero and practicing, and he's 5 and the little one's, you know, too soon. So those things, because I know that when I'm away, like I miss it. So I make the most of those moments as well as chucking a video on and capturing those moments.
Man, I need to do that, bro. I actually need to do more of that. So thank you for all of the learnings, my bro.
You can also do it to your wahine, although she doesn't like it. I video her eating and she's like, stop that. Don't do that. So try that video, your wahine, as she's eating.
Bro, I will see what she does. But we watch a lot of like eating TikTok sort of like videos. And there's one out there that sort of like says, I'll eat at the same pace of my partner.
Oh, yes.
Have you seen those ones? And we sort of like joke about those sort of things because if she was following me, she could not keep up, bro.
Oh, yeah, you're fast.
I just inhale it. But then if I'm following her, it'll just take way too long. So we have crack-ups about that. Hoi anō, e te kōkō, tēnā koe, i noho tahi I tēnei kaupapa. Thank you so much for coming in, bro, for sharing stories of your upbringing. You know, we've even spoken to being a pāpā, a tamariki, and all of the mātauranga that you've been able to gift the podcast, to gift our listeners around ngā ahuatanga o te Ngahere, ngā manu, and even just knowing that you've been on a similar journey with te Reo Māori, like for me, and I'm sure for the listeners who are also in that space of revitalizing te reo, and seeing where you are now and other ways that you've gone about it. Just truly, truly grateful, bro. So kia koe o tiraki tō tama, me mihi ka tika, e kia koutou, e te whānau, tēnā koutou, o tira tēnā tātou. Doits!